Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome, all you students here that's in this room with us today. And also we have the overflow room upstairs in MR 204. We have all of our academic centers dialed in, and of course the webcast. So students on the VAC, some of the VAC students and alumni here, so we're just all together in one big family. We're glad that you're here to join us today. All of you here for the job fair? No, I'm just kidding. For the BBS licensing information. And we're so fortunate to have the entire staff at our disposal here to explain all the processes to you. And we'll have a Q&A session at the end because we have so many people. And for those of you that are out there on the webcast or upstairs, if you have any questions, you're going to email it to sswcd@usc.edu and we'll be sure to address your questions. So on behalf of the Office of Career and Professional Development, you hear from us often, right? We send you those groovy job announcements. My name is Carrie Diddle, I'm Assistant Dean of Career and Professional Development. My colleague Juan Macias, Assistant Director, and Luisa Sanchez, our admin, and also Grace Park is upstairs, running our MRM 204. So we want to welcome you, and you know, our office, we do a lot of things, and we help prepare you for the job market. Right? We know it's a very competitive job market. We want you to be job ready. We want you to be shiny, bright, ready to do some of that stuff. And some of you have interviews for your placement and jobs real soon. So we're also happy to have you here. If you're not graduating soon, just use this information. And many of you know that the California exams have changed this year, and it's going to be with the whole national exam. There's two exams that you need to take, the California Law and Ethics exam and the ASWB clinical exam. Two exams. I sent out emails very recently and there was some confusion about not having to take the exam. You have to take both exams, okay? But it was about coursework. You do not need to take additional coursework in Law and Ethics because that's covered in your curriculum here. So as a graduate, you can spread the word to your peers and other alums that they don't need to take additional coursework on Law and Ethics. So you know we do workshops on resumes and interviewing and we have employer information sessions. We ask that employers to have several job openings to come and talk to you. We also develop a non-traditional social work that Juan basically spearheads so that we can broaden job opportunities for MSWs and seek out positions that don't normally ordinarily hire social workers, but they really value our skill set. We also have the alumni mentor program, and I could go on and on, but that's not what we're here for. So just a reminder for those of you that are here in Hamilton, if you could keep the noise to a minimum because our speakers and microphones are in the ceiling, and so a lot of noise transmits, and we can't turn the audio any louder, so that's kind of how it goes. Okay? So yeah, just be careful when you're crunching your food and if you eat yummy Panda Express ice milk. So direct from Sacramento, California, you'll be hearing from Steve Slaughtergrant, the Assistant Executive Officer, and the staff there. And a lot of the staff actually reviews your application, the areas of the application to see if you have submitted all the requirements and completed the requirements. Okay? You'll be hearing about the updated California LCSW licensing requirements, navigating the process, additional coursework needed, collecting hours, how you submit documentation. Okay? And please note, this only relates to the California LCSW. For any other ones outside of California, please refer to that state governing board or that jurisdiction governing board. Okay? We're going to hold the questions till the end because we have so many people here today and we have so much to hear from the staff there. And we'll be covering a lot of information. They'll answer many of the common questions that you'll have. So just listen carefully and then we'll address those at the end. Again, if you have questions, you want to email it to sswcd.edu. We will take care of that as well. Try to make them as succinct as possible. And sometimes we're in a position of having to translate what you're trying to ask. Okay. So they're recording this presentation and it'll be archived and put on YouTube in the next couple of weeks. And is this the same link or is it
be different?
It's a different link. Will we send that out? Okay, we'll send that out. So during the presentation, you can refer to the document links that were emailed to you if you would like. They're not necessary for you to have, some of you printed them out. You can access all of those forms on the www.pbs.ca.gov website. And there we have it. So today we're pleased to have with us a panel of professionals who will help us better understand the LCSW process. We have Steve Sodergren, Assistant Executive Officer, Darlene York, Lead Licensing Analyst, Trish Winkler, LCSW Evaluator, Deborah McAdams, ASW Evaluator, and Christina Hansen, LCSW Evaluator. With this, I'd like to hand it over to Steve Sodergren, and he will take it from there. Okay?
Thank you, Carrie. You actually took my role over there. I was supposed to do all the introductions, so thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, I'll take it back.
No, that's fine. That's fine. So you know our fine evaluators here that are basically, they're going to be here to assist you through the licensing process and getting you to that final licensure. My role is kind of just today is just to give you an explanation of we're the regulatory board for the state of California that license clinical social workers. We also have other licenses that we do, marriage and family therapists, professional clinical counselors, and licensed educational professionals. But today you're mainly concerned with clinical social work licenses, so that's what we're going to be talking about here today. We've been around for 70 years, and actually the first license that we did, what brought us into existence was actually licensing social workers. So for 70 years we've been licensing, and because of the social work community, they wanted a license way back when, 1945. Currently, right now, we have about 100,000 or more than 100,000 licensees and registrants, and it's a growing field. So that population is going to keep increasing as the years go on. I'm not sure what else I have to say other than. At the board, we try to provide as best customer service as we can to try to get you through the process. So our evaluators are very knowledgeable of all the regulatory processes and all the statutes. So they're here to really translate all that for you, and they can also assist you because reading those laws and the actual requirements can be kind of daunting. So they're excellent professional, I guess, what would you call it? They're the experts, so they will guide you through the whole process. And then later on, I can answer questions a little bit more about exams and that kind of that process too. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Darlene, who can kind of give you an idea. I think she's going to talk about the licensing process in a nutshell, the kind of basic steps.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Can you raise your hand if you hear me? Okay, good. Okay, yeah, let's begin by talking about the licensing process in a nutshell, and then we'll expound on it and go further after that. So we need to gather an understanding of the bigger picture of the licensing process before we discuss the detailed aspects of the process. Any person pursuing an LCSW in the state of California will follow a similar path. First, you must get your master's degree in social work. Second, you must register with the BBS as an associate registrant and begin earning post-degree hours or experience. You will apply to take the California Law and Ethics exam, and then you will apply to take your clinical exam. You will apply for your initial licensure, and then you will get your official LCSW license. Individuals might take slightly a different path towards licensure depending on what their situation is, such as you might move out of state, you might take a few years off. Whatever the case, the vast majority of future LCSWs will follow a path most similar to what I just described, 1 through 7. At this time, I'm going to hand over to Deborah. She's going to walk you through the ASW licensing process, registration process, excuse me.
Good morning. To get started with your ASW application, first, you're going to download the ASW registration application packet from the website by clicking on Forms Breeze/Pubs tab and then clicking on the ASW/LCSW related and print your application packet. Once you have the application packet, you want to return to the home page and highlight Applicants, then click on ASW/LCSW to view the ASW video, which will answer many of your questions and help you navigate through the application process smoothly. Please be aware that the address you provide to the board as your address of record is public information. Therefore, you might consider using a P.O. box or place of employment. You must include your official sealed transcript from the university with a conferral date posted. Please do not submit your application without the final transcript, as this slows down the process, since we must evaluate your application twice. Once when we send out the deficiency, and again when we receive all the documentation. All applicants must have live scan fingerprint clearance from DOJ and FBI prior to being issued an ASW number. The live scan form automatically prints out at the end of your application packet. Follow the instructions to have this completed at an approved live scan service site. Make sure you attach a copy and include it with your ASW application packet. A $75 fee must accompany your ASW application along with a current passport-size photo. If you forget to include the payment, the packet will be returned to you. For any other deficiency, you will be notified through mail correspondence. If you would like confirmation of receipt, please consider using a mailing service with a tracking number or attach a self-addressed, stamped envelope with your application. Additionally, whenever sending documents to the BBS, please make sure to retain a copy for your own records prior to mailing. The average processing time is 60 days. All applications are processed in date order received. Once your ASW application has been approved and your number has been issued, you will receive a confirmation letter in the mail. This number enables you to work under supervision to accrue hours. The actual certificate will be sent under separate cover approximately 3 weeks later. You can also confirm your ASW registration number by going to our homepage and clicking on the Breeze online service, Verify a License. Once you have been issued an ASW registration number, you are required to sign up to take the California Law and Ethics exam. Go to our website, click on Forms/Pubs, and scroll down to Exams. Print out the initial California Law and Ethics exam application and submit it along with the fee. You will be notified by the testing vendor, PSI, within 4 to 6 weeks to schedule your exam date. Here's some important things to remember. You must be issued an ASW registration number before you can begin accruing postmaster's work experience hours. If you have received a conviction or disciplinary action in the past, your application will be referred to the board's enforcement unit for review. This will result in a longer processing time for your application. After you are registered as an ASW, you must remember to renew your registration annually for a fee of $75. If your registration lapses, you will not be allowed to count the supervised work experience hours gained when your ASW was delinquent or invalid. A courtesy renewal notice will be mailed to your address of record approximately 90 days prior to the expiration date. Please allow 4 to 6 weeks for processing a renewal by mail, or you can renew online and it will be processed immediately. You may only renew this number a maximum of 5 times. On the 6th year, you will not receive a renewal notice and you cannot renew online. Go to our homepage and click on Forms/Pubs, then scroll down to Applicant Related ASW/LCSW and print out an ASW subsequent registration packet. Once you have been issued an ASW number, you must sign up to take the California Law and Ethics exam. And to summarize, when submitting your ASW application, include a passport-sized photo, a completed live scan form, an official transcript with your MSW degree posted in the university sealed envelope, and a check for $75. Now Trish is going to discuss
the LCSW application. I'm Trish Winkler, one of the LCSW evaluators. I'd like to take a few minutes to discuss the application process, not for the ASW application, but for the LCSW application, which after your 2 years of supervised hours, you'll be submitting that to the board. And I want to prepare you to submit the LCSW application in the correct format. So for your information, the LCSW examination eligibility application packet is available on the board's website at www.bbs.ca.gov. When it comes to applications, one of the frequently asked questions is, how long will it take to process my application? Please know that it's the board's goal to process your application as quickly as possible so that you may receive your letter of eligibility to sit for the ASWB clinical exam. Let's begin with the additional coursework requirements. In addition to your MSW, you will also have to complete the additional coursework requirements, which are in place to ensure you have education in key subject matter areas as follows. Child abuse assessment and reporting, 7 hours. Human sexuality, 10 hours. Alcoholism and other chemical substance dependency, 15 hours. Spousal or partner abuse, assessment, detection, and intervention, 15 hours. Aging, long-term care, and elder dependent adult abuse, 10 hours. California Law and Professional Ethics, 18 hours. But this is only for our out-of-state graduates or an out-of-state licensee or somebody with out-of-state experience, but graduates from California schools have already met this requirement, so you do not need to do that. These additional coursework requirements may be completed while you are enrolled in your MSW program, but must be complete prior to applying for examination eligibility. To see which courses from your school fulfill these requirements, visit the schools section on our website. You can click on the applicant tab and then you can go directly to your school. USC has provided us with the courses that meet our requirements. Then you compare your transcript to those courses to see if you've fulfilled that. If you graduate and you still need to take some of these courses, you can take them after you graduate from accredited or approved universities, county, state, or government entities, or approved continuing education providers. A list of the board-recognized approval agencies can be accessed from our website by clicking on the Licensee tab, followed by Continuing Education, and then follow the prompts to the approval agencies. What is required for you to submit your LCSW application? The board requires a fee of $100 to file your application. This includes the evaluation of your hours and your coursework. Fingerprint clearances are only required if you do not have a current ASW registration. Included in the application packet are instructions a step-by-step checklist for you to follow. The instructions are a valuable tool to assist you in successfully submitting a complete application. You may wish to retain these for your records. However, you do not need to submit them with your LCSW application. The application is a fillable application, so you can fill it out online. However, you will need to print the application and mail it in to the board with the rest of your forms. To reduce application processing times, it is required that you submit a complete application. So what is a complete application? Let's discuss what forms you are required to submit to the board. The LCSW application, including a current passport size photo, along with the examination security notice. Every supervisor needs to provide you with the next 3 forms: the clinical social worker experience verification form, the supervisory plan, and the responsibility statement for supervisors of an ASW. On the clinical social worker experience verification form, you will total all of your supervised hours from a setting, and the supervisor will sign the form. Please remember, this is important, that a W-2 is required for every employer and for every year that you are claiming experience. If you are claiming experience during the current year, your most current pay stub should be submitted. The next 2 forms must be completed prior to supervision. The supervisory plan, you will fill out this form with your supervisor. Please submit this form for each setting. The responsibility statement for supervisors of an ASW. Your supervisor signs this form. An additional form that is included in this packet is the ASW weekly log. This form is a resource provided to you, but you are not required to use this form or submit it to the board. You will send in your clinical social work experience verification forms and verification of completion of additional coursework with your LCSW application packet. Do not submit any documentation to the board until you are ready to submit a complete LCSW application. Please remember, all forms are required to be submitted to the board with an original wet signature. Copies will not be accepted. So I just want to reiterate that for each supervisor, you're going to need those 3 forms: the clinical social worker experience verification form, the supervisory plan, and the responsibility statement. And do not send in your experience verification form until you're ready to submit a complete package. This concludes the information that we have for you in regard to the LCSW application process. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Christina.
Hello everybody, so we're going to talk about required supervised work experience. So in addition to your degree and additional coursework, you're required to accrue 3,200 hours of supervised work experience and 104 weeks of supervision. Both the supervised work experience and the weeks of supervision are broken down into categories. Please see the LCSW breakdown of required experience for more information. If you have the handout that was provided to you today, it's on page 2. There's a chart there for you to review. The experience must be gained under the supervision of a licensed mental health professional. Depending on the type of license your supervisor holds, he or she needs to meet different requirements in order to supervise you. There are 5 acceptable supervisor license types: the licensed clinical social workers, the licensed marriage and family therapists, the licensed professional clinical counselors, the licensed psychologist, and licensed physicians nationally board certified in psychiatry. The general supervision requirements are as follows. They all must be licensed for 2 years in California or another state and hold a valid California license. The LCSWs, LMFTs, and the LPCCs also must complete a 15-hour supervision course. The licensed psychologist and the licensed physicians that are nationally board certified in psychiatry do not need to complete the 15-hour supervision course. To qualify for licensures, ASWs are required to obtain 1,700 hours of the total 3,200 hours of postmaster's degree experience and 13 weeks of individual supervision under the supervision of a LCSW. For a detailed list of the other supervisor requirements, please see the responsibility statement for supervisors of an associate clinical social worker. The board encourages applicants to check your supervisor's license. You cannot gain hours under someone holding an invalid or delinquent license. You can verify the status of your supervisor's license anonymously using the BBS online license verification feature on our website. To qualify for licensure, ASWs are required to obtain 104 weeks of supervision. To fully understand the 104 weeks of the supervision requirement, consider using the chart that's entitled LCSW Breakdown of Required Experience. It will provide a visual clarity for you for this requirement. To qualify for licensures, ASWs are required to obtain 104 weeks of supervision. Any week in which an ASW receives 1 hour of individual supervision or 2 hours of group supervision counts as 1 supervised weeks. Of your 104 required weeks of supervision, 52 of those weeks must be weeks in which you meet with your individual supervisor for at least 1 hour. Of the 52 required weeks of individual supervision, at least 13 weeks must be with an LCSW supervisor. The remaining hours can be done in group supervision. You will need to be supervised in order to accrue work experience, so you will be completing the 104 supervised week requirement and the 3,200 hours of work experience requirement simultaneously. Before you can apply for licensure, you must complete both requirements. In closing, one last option for ASW supervision is via video conferencing. As a reminder, beginning January 1 of 2010, all supervision may be obtained via video conferencing if an ASW is working in a government entity, school, college or university, or an institution that is both nonprofit and charitable. This concludes the information that we have for you with regard to supervised work experience. I will now turn the mic back to Darlene, who will continue our presentation.
Thank you, Christina. Okay, thank you. In addition to the 104 supervised weeks, you are required to gain the 3,200 hours of work experience. So I'm going to expound on that a little. The 3,200 hours of work experience breaks down into different categories. Trish explained the forms that you will be using. So when I say Section A and Section B, these sections are found within the experience verification forms. In Section A of the experience verification form, a minimum of 2,000 hours is required in clinical psychosocial diagnosis, assessment, and treatment, including individual or group psychotherapy counseling. And of the 2,000 hours, a minimum of 750 hours must be in face-to-face individual or group psychotherapy. In Section B of the form, there's another category. A maximum of 1,200 hours can be gained in client-centered advocacy, consultation, evaluation, research, direct supervisor contact, and workshops, seminars, training sessions, and conferences directly related to clinical social work if they have been approved by the applicant's supervisor. Of the 3,200 hours of work experience, 1,700 hours must be gained under the supervision of an LCSW. The remaining 1,500 hours can be gained either by an LPCC, an MFT, a licensed psychologist, or a licensed physician board certified in psychiatry. You need at least 1 hour of direct supervision contact to count any work experience in a given week. 1 hour direct supervisor contact can either be 1 hour of individual supervision or 2 hours of group. Group supervision should not include more than 8 individuals receiving supervision or in any group. Hours of a maximum of 40 hours a week can be gained, or you can claim a maximum of 40 hours a week. Face-to-face psychotherapy, counseling, and extra supervision. In any given week, if you have one individual hour of supervision, you can gain up to 40 hours a week work experience. And within that 40 hours a week work experience, you can have 10 hours of that being face-to-face psychotherapy. If for some reason you go over the 10 hours of face-to-face psychotherapy, you will need additional supervision. You will either need 1 more hour of individual supervision or 2 more hours of group. Anything above 10. Let's give an example. If for some reason you are covering the shift of a colleague and they go on vacation and you need to see their clients and they have 10 clients that they have to see in that week. Okay, so now they're asking you to do 20 hours of face-to-face psychotherapy. With your 1 hour of supervision, you're allowed to do the 10, but you will need to have the additional supervision to take over that colleague's clients. Another thing I want to touch on is the 6-year rule. All hours of experience must be gained within the most recent 6 years from the time you apply for licensure. Example, if the board receives an application today, it will be dated 3/24/2016. For hours to be accepted, the hours would have to be gained between 3/24/2010 through 3/24/2016. Any hours older than that will not be accepted. Once your application is approved, you will begin the process of taking the clinical exam. Once you are in the examination process, meeting your examination deadlines is critical. You must test at least once a year to remain in the exam cycle. Failing to meet an examination deadline results in an abandonment of your application. Once you become abandoned, you would have to reapply and meet the current requirements. That would be grounds for abandonment. Okay, thank you. Once you pass the clinical examination, you can apply and receive your clinical social work license. For more information, please visit the applicant registrant section of the BBS website, and I would strongly suggest adding your name to the BBS subscriber list. This way you're kept informed of any and all changes that come to the board. Please don't rely on peers. He said, she said, I heard. The best way to get the most accurate information is adding your name to the BBS subscriber list. This concludes our presentation. At this time, we will answer questions.
And I'm going to talk, you're talking about the subscriber list, very important. I think something that's really important for people, and actually any licensee or anybody that's studying to be a social worker, is to keep track of what's going on with the board. We have what kind of laws and regulations are going through what we're talking about on these emerging issues. And on our website, we're trying to do a better job of really getting information out there on our website. As you can see, this is there's a lot of laws and a lot of regulations, and it's very hard to interpret. So it's good if you go to our website, bbs.ca.gov, have a lot of information on there. Also, like Darlene said, subscriber list. On the front page, there is a link that says subscriber. Basically, you put your name on there. We'll email you important notices as in new law changes and such, so that's good to be on there. We also have board meetings quarterly, and at those board meetings, we discuss all the emerging issues, regulations, and statutes and laws that may affect you. On the website, there is a location where we have those agendas. It's under board meetings. You might want to go in there and check out those agendas once in a while and see if there's something that interests you. You're free to attend any of those meetings, any of our committee or board meetings, to voice your opinions or just to listen in. So I think it's a good thing to at least keep an eye on what's going on with the laws and regulations, and it's also to get involved, because that's what, in the board meetings, we really like to hear the opinion of the actual licensees or the registrants that these possible changes will affect. We also have a Facebook page too. We're trying to get into social media. You can follow us or like us. I don't know what the proper term is. I think it's follow us on Facebook. And when we have a change or a major announcement, we'll put it on we'll actually try to get it out there on the subscriber list. We'll email you, but we also will post it on Facebook. And we do have a Twitter account. So I would highly recommend, taking some time every month just to see what's going on with the board and what's going on with their board meetings or committee meetings. And it will, I think, help you in the long run to have that kind of knowledge. So that's all I have. No? You said questions or?
Yeah, feel free to ask any questions, and we'll try to get them answered to the best of our ability. If we don't have an answer for you,
Okay, thank you. That's a lot of information, right? I am glad I'm licensed. But thank you. So I just want to remind everyone, if you want to email a question, it's sswcd@unc.edu. And I just want to make one comment about some of the requirements in child abuse, human sexuality, substance abuse. If you've taken an elective in any of those areas, that covers it. Also, we have a new arrangement with UCCF, University Consortium on Children and Families, where they are going to offer a limited number of CEU courses in most of those areas for free for our alumni. So when you graduate, you're going to want to sign on to the, put your contact information on the website, and we're going to put you on the alumni listserv at that point. And then you'll get information about workshops, continuing ed, etc. Okay? So, but not until you graduate, then you get that. Okay? And we're going to take Q&A, right?
Yeah. So, thank our presenters. Thank you very much. We're going to go into Q&A, questions and answers. So get your questions ready. We have a couple of questions from upstairs because we have some other students and alums who are upstairs. So the first question is, does my substance abuse class that I took during my master's program count towards the substance abuse CEU requirement?
Yes, I'll answer that. Yes, your if it's titled the same as our coursework, like substance abuse, and it's on your transcript, which we must receive in the school sealed envelope, we will accept that. Also, you can go to our website and click on the applicant tab and then schools, and you can actually see what courses from USC, for instance, fulfill our requirements.
Okay, thank you very much. And another question. How would you recommend studying for the law and ethics exam?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I think what our canned response is usually to people, I think the big question out there is, should I take a coursework? Do I go to a testing prep center? I'm not sure. I don't know. I think what we say is rely on what you're learning, rely on the books that you have in your school, what you've just learned, you're coming out of that. I think you should rely on that. The test prep centers, they shouldn't have any, they might help you with testing techniques and maybe how to go through that, but I think where you're at right now, you've probably already mastered those techniques for the exams that you've already been taking. I think the best thing is to rely on the knowledge you have and have faith in that. And I think what really kills people, I don't know if that's the right expression, but is really the anxiety level. So, I mean, that's, if a test prep company is going to help you rely, kind of get that anxiety level down, then that's fine. I'm not sure it's all worth the money. So I think looking back at what you have, your textbooks and such, probably the best thing.
I'd comment on that. Something we recently negotiated and updated. We have 4 different licensing companies that we've negotiated discounts for USC alumni. And I think that law and ethics one, I think that's in there in some of them. So again, when you become an alum, sign up for our listserv and that information's on there. If not, you can contact our office too.
Mm-hmm. Some other questions here, and what we'll do is if you have a question, you can go ahead and ask it, just raise your voice, and then just let us know if you guys can't hear it in Sacramento. All right, so who's going to be our first question from this room? No pressure. So we have a question back.
On the 104 weeks of supervision,
Speak up. Speak up. There's mics here.
on the 104 weeks of supervision, it says of the 52 required weeks of individual supervision, at least 13 must be within LCSW. So does that mean that LMFTs, licensed psychologists, that doesn't count?
Okay, so what that means is, okay, of the 104 supervised weeks, you need 52 of those weeks being in individual supervision. That can be with the MFT, the LCSW, all license types. Okay, you keep in mind that the 104 weeks and the 3,200 hours of work experience are two separate requirements, but they run concurrently. Okay, so you are required 1,700 hours of work experience with the licensed clinical social worker. So of that 52 weeks of supervision, of individual supervision, you have to show that you've had at least 13 individual weeks with the LCSW. The remainder of those 1,700 hours can be gained under group supervision. Does that make sense? And the other remainder of those 52 weeks can be done with the other license types. Because you need 52 individual weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense? Was that clear?
So if I'm hearing correctly, the 13 weeks must be within LCSW and not any other licensed professional.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Question in front.
You also mentioned that 1,200 of those hours have to be client-centered advocacy, also research, workshops, seminars, and conferences. Were there any other categories I missed? I just wanted to be clear because I'm not familiar with those types of hours.
Okay, those are the exact categories that can be claimed, and it is you are not required to gain hours in that category. All your hours could be clinical hours, but if you're having a hard time getting those clinical hours, you can utilize other areas within the scope of practice as long as your supervisor deems it appropriate. But you can gain up to 1,200 hours in those areas.
Okay. I'm gonna take your question in a second. We have another question from upstairs. What is the best way to find who can actually do your supervision? I'll ask.
Okay, so that's the question.
Way to find who
Okay.
can actually do your supervision.
Okay, so you must gain your hours in a place that is lawfully, in a setting that lawfully sees clients. Okay, so you can gain your hours in a private practice setting. You cannot open your own private practice, unfortunately, as an ASW. But you can work in a private practice setting. You can gain your experience there. You can gain almost in hospitals, different agencies, your schools, universities, government entities. We do not have a list of how to get supervision. Usually you find that information out through your peers, employers. When you are seeking a place of employment, keep that in mind that you would be able to gain hours there. Some people are not able to gain hours the first 1 or 2 years that they are put on a waiting list. So really when when you're out doing your job search, make sure that you ask those questions.
Comment on that, because we actually have a list of alumni, faculty, and staff that do supervision on the side. Like some places don't have supervision, right? And so you have to pay for that on the side. So we have a list of people that do that on the side, so you can contact our office and we will send that information out. But we're not sure about this question. Someone emailed us. I think they said, are we applying for jobs that have them, or is it like another internship? It's a job, like you want to get paid for this, okay? So you're done with your internship when you're done with school here. So it is a job that you're hoping that there's going to be clinical experience and a clinical supervisor, a licensed clinical supervisor. Sign up for your hours on that.
Okay, can I mention something to that effect? When you're seeking employment, the only way you can gain hours is with a W-2 as an employee or a volunteer, no pay. That is the only way. You cannot gain your experience under a 1099.
99 is, means they're an independent contractor?
Yes.
Okay. So you cannot accrue hours.
You cannot be,
if you are an
it would be
independent
considered unlawful practice if you go into contracting as an independent contractor as an ASW.
Is it a related question?
Yeah,
We have a related question.
but some places like the VA, you have to be a contractor in the first couple of years due to federal budget. So how do you expect us to get our hours and get paid, but you're not allowing us to do the hours?
That's because it's unlawful practice. It's in our statutes and regs. An associate registered with the board is not allowed to work as an independent contractor at all. Okay, they have to be, as a registered, they have to be an
Ask your
employee.
question again.
Only a
You
licensed
when you
can
followed up, please. Audience member, ask your question again. You were muted when you followed up.
Okay, I'm failing to see where there's a problem ethics here. I mean, you're still doing your job, you're still following the law. So what's the problem?
Okay, I see what you're saying. Are you talking about a federal agency?
A contract in general.
No.
Yeah, but I'm talking like more on contract.
You cannot.
No, I don't think they heard you when you said the VA. So
Yeah, well, like places like the VA, yeah.
No, okay, a place like the VA, they are an exempt setting, okay? You can work in a VA setting. You have to be paid on a W-2 in order to count those hours. If you're contracting with them and they're paying you on a 1099, we're not going to accept the hours.
To add something, what my understanding is when you're working at the VA, oftentimes they'll have you get connected to a temp agency and get paid through the temporary agency until the vacancy becomes available for you to participate full time. Is that also against the regulations?
No, we see this quite often. Okay, so what happens usually, one of the staffing agencies will hire associates and pay them on their W-2s. Okay, so at the time they submit those hours, we're going to ask the VA to submit a letter stating that this applicant was hired through a staffing agency as an employee there. So that way we can accept those hours. But the VA has to be willing, and we're going to ask either Human Resources or the director of the social work program, and it has to be on employer letterhead, the VA letterhead, stating that they indeed hired through the staffing agency. And we would see that the W-2s came from the staffing agency.
All right, good. We had another question in the back.
Undergrad coursework, can that count as additional coursework requirements?
Yes, we will accept undergrad as long as we receive the transcript in the school's sealed envelope. Let's say you took human sexuality at a community college. We will accept that. It will fill our requirement for 10 hours of human sexuality, but we would have to have that transcript.
It's transferred in.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go to a question from upstairs. I completed a 65-hour domestic violence training to be a crisis counselor / advocate and received a certificate. Can I mail this certificate in, and will it be counted to fulfill the 15-hour requirement for spousal / partner abuse assessment, detection, and intervention?
Okay, thank you for your question. We would look at it. We would have to see that it is a certificate of completion. Most certificates have a provider number, or a school, university, and if it's very clear on the title, and most of those certificates have an hour amount. Yes, you could submit it in with your application at the time you apply for licensure. Unfortunately, we do not pre-evaluate them, so you'll have to just kind of hold on to that, and those are always looked at on a case by case.
And most of those certificates say at the bottom, California BBS approved.
Okay, so they would have to make sure that they're an official provider. Okay. I just want to remind everybody who's watching us via the webcast, please email your questions to sswcd@usc.edu. sswcd@usc.edu. We have another question from our webcast viewers. What did you mean by it's best to get a P.O. box because our address will be public information? Who will send us mail to our P.O. box versus directly to our home address?
Okay, so when you're issued an ASW number, or if hypothetically you had some sort of a deficiency, I'm going to create a letter and it's going to be mailed to your address of record. The address of record is public information. So if somebody, once you get approved with your ASW number, potentially a client wants to look up your ASW intern number, they're going to see your address, they're going to see where you live. So that's why we recommend that you only use a P.O. box or a place of employment so that your clients don't have your home address.
Okay, great. Can I take another question from the audience here? Question in the back, speak up please.
How long, like for instance, the domestic violence and the substance abuse courses we're taking right now, how long are they valid for licensure? Like let's say we fail our first exam, are they still valid? Like for how many years?
Oh, no, once you've completed the coursework, whether it's in your MSW program or even if you've done it online from one of the BBS approved providers, you don't ever have to repeat it. There's no expiration date.
All right, so we have another question from upstairs. What does the BBS accept as verification of additional training or coursework besides transcripts? Will verification letters from organizations that provided the training suffice?
Well, it just depends on if the training was provided by an approved provider. And I can direct you again to the website under the licensee tab and then continuing education to view a list of the approval agencies. So, or the certificate, if it says on it, BBS approved at the bottom, or it might be a county, if it's a county course that you attended, we'll accept that.
Okay. Another question from our webcast viewers. Do evidence-based trainings count towards our hours? For example, TFCBT.
I'm not familiar with that.
Excuse me,
So I guess it might be other evidence-based, maybe if it's like, I don't know, I'm thinking of the ones we get here, motivational interviewing, problem-solving therapy.
It's just
training.
No. The topics that you just mentioned are not our required coursework. So that wouldn't match up with any of our requirements.
All right, thank you.
No, I was just gonna say that, yeah, unless it matches up exactly with the clinical supervision, what was it again?
Yeah.
Human sexuality, child abuse,
They're required to work.
aging, long-term care, etc. The long-term courses, unless it matches up exactly, you're not looking at any other kind of training.
Question in the back, and then I'll go to the questions over here.
Can you repeat what exactly we need for the packet to apply for our BBS? And if you can also clarify how the photo is supposed to look?
The packet.
Are you referring to the initial ASW packet?
Or are you talking
That
about
was
the
it, yeah.
LCSW application?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So for your ASW application, you're going to go to the website. You're going to click on Forms, and you're going to go to ASW/LCSW related. You're going to click on that and print out the ASW registration application packet. There is a checklist there. There will be instructions so that it's very user-friendly. There's also a video that I mentioned that you want to view. In the video, you can find that by, you're going to highlight applicants, and then you're going to click on ASW/LCSW to view the video, which will answer many of your questions and just go over everything in the checklist. So you're going to need your application, a passport-sized photo, your completed live scan form, an official sealed transcript from the university, and your check for $75. You're going to mail all that in, all together in one packet.
And that was reviewed in the presentation, so we are going to be sending out the recording. But I've heard that that video is dynamite, so make sure that you access the resources that were just suggested. Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to a question over here. And also, if the sign-in sheet, make sure that all of you sign the sign-in sheet, please.
I think my question was more like clarification of the previous question related to CBT training. I just wanted to clarify if the person was asking, do those trainings count for hours? I thought that that's what the question was asking.
It says, yeah, did those trainings count towards their hours?
Hours, yeah, not as like the coursework.
Okay. It depends on if the supervisor deems them countable hours, okay? Because those have just been added to the experience verification forms, I believe this year. They went into effect this year, 2015? I think 2015, they just went into effect where you can count your trainings, seminars, conferences towards your work experience hours. But just keep in mind, the maximum amount of hours you can count in that category is 1,200. So that you're going to just be adding it to your assessments and advocacy hours.
Okay, great. Okay, we have another one. So, kind of in a very similar fashion, does case management or individual academic counseling count for 1,200 hours of client-centered advocacy, consultation, evaluation, or research?
Okay, so the board does not define those categories. It's going to be up to a qualified supervisor to determine that you're working within the scope of practice. The board does define psychotherapy, and that is the only thing the board will define. And you can find that in our Business and Professions Codes 4996.9.
Let's ask another one here. Can you see patients in a different location than your supervisor works? For has multiple locations, and you see clients in one location and go to a different location for supervision, where your supervisor is.
Okay, so if you're seeking off-site supervision, oftentimes an applicant cannot get supervision at their place of employment. So if that's where you're lawfully seeing your clients, that is your employment. So sometimes the employer does not offer that supervision, so you might have to hire an off-site supervisor, or the employer hires the off-site supervisor. In either case, the supervisor needs to have access to those files. So there needs to be a letter of agreement / contract in place. And that letter of agreement needs to come from the employer authorizing the supervision of the applicant's clients and their overall work 40-hour-a-week work experience. So everyone needs to be in agreement because of the confidentiality of the client files. So yes, a supervisor can come in and supervise somebody's place of employment. And there is a sample letter of agreement on the website that needs to be completed before supervision starts.
Okay, great. So that was great information around having an external supervisor come in. I think in this case we were also just wanted to verify that if they're working for the same organization, if they're in two different sites, the therapy is being delivered in two different sites, it's fine, right? As long as
yes,
the
absolutely.
supervisor
If let's say you're working for Kaiser over here in South Sac, and you're working for Kaiser in North Sac, yes, absolutely. You know, you're going to have to be under the same umbrella.
Another question I had a hand over here. Go ahead.
Do you explain more about the law and ethics exam and when we're supposed to take it? I wasn't quite clear when you first stated that.
I can do that. You want to handle that? The law and ethics exam. Once you get your registration, you apply for your ASW registration. To renew that registration, you actually have to take the law and ethics exam. Not pass. You can pass or fail. You just have to take the law and ethics exam before you're able to renew that. And a renewal period for the ASW registration is 1 year. So once you got your license, your ASW registration, then you would go ahead and sign up for the law and ethics exam.
So as soon as you get your ASW number, you can take the exam, law and ethics exam?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
With
Well, after you...
Wait, so
Clarification. You get your ASW registration, then you actually will have to fill out the form and submit the fee. So just getting the registration doesn't that just gives you, quote unquote, the eligibility to apply and schedule your exam. To apply for your law and ethics exam. But there's no really review of any hours or anything. It's just a matter of, do you have a registration number? If you do, you can take the law and ethics exam.
Second question, are we allowed to change our address of record?
Yes. I would, and I highly recommend right now. That's one of the things we have online in our Breeze system is an address change. I would highly recommend once you receive your registration to get onto Breeze and establish an account. And if you ever change your address, you can go online and simply change it there, and that will change it in our records. And that's some of the issues we have. We were mentioning about the P.O. boxes. I think P.O. box is good to have. We seem to have an issue with if people, registrants, listing their agencies and such as their address of record. While I understand it's better than your home address, I would probably recommend doing that. A lot of these agencies, the mail seems to get lost. So P.O. box is highly recommended. And also, legally, you have to change if you change address, your address of record, you have to notify us within 30 days, I believe is the requirement. So yes, you can change that online, or we do have forms you can send that in also to change your address. Okay, yeah.
Okay, another question?
I've heard a couple of changes with licensing. So us being graduating and applying for this, is this good for California only, or is this good for the rest of USA? For the state?
You mean that the license that you'll obtain from us? Every municipality, every state has their own requirements for licensure. For the LCSWs, it's kind of nice because we actually just went over to the national exam, clinical exam. So what that will do is you won't be able to take your license across states automatically, but you will be, what we call portability will be increased because you have had taken that national exam. Other states, that was one of the requirements, so you'll have one requirement checked off. As for what other requirements they have, I can't speak to that. They're all different, but there's really no true portability in licensure right now, and that's what we all kind of were striving for then whenever down the road. But with the ASWB clinical exam now as part of your requirements, that's going to help you out, go across states.
So, for example, if someone's moving from Texas or something, and they move here, they would have the ASWB exam part covered, but they have to take the California Law and Ethics exam.
Yeah.
Right.
So, those kind of nuances, basically.
Okay, another question from our online audience. Are you able to get any hours for business development in a private practice setting?
Business development, as in, I'm not sure what that would.
We're unclear of the question.
Trying to get clients?
Do you mean like gaining? I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
So maybe business development in a private practice setting might mean efforts to bring in new business. Maybe it's marketing for new clients.
Only hours
So-
that fall within the scope of practice are going to be deemable hours, and that's going to be up to a qualified supervisor to determine that.
We have another question from upstairs. What is the maximum supervision hours I can obtain per week? For instance, if I accumulate 40 hours of face-to-face individual or group therapy, God forbid, does that mean I should receive 4 hours of supervision?
No, if you are working 40 hours a week work experience, if you want to claim all that 40 hours a week, as long as it falls within the scope of practice. In other words, you can't count administrative time towards your scope of practice. Yeah. So let's say you're doing everything that full 40 hours a week, including your supervised contact. You're working 40 hours a week. In order for you to count that full 40 hours a week, all you need is 1 hour of individual supervision or 2 hours of group. And with that being said, you will be able to count up to 10 hours of that being face-to-face psychotherapy. But if you go over the 10 hours, anything over 10, 11 through the remainder of your week, then you'll need additional supervision, either 1 more hour of individual supervision or 2 more hours of group, or however it's broken down. And just so you know, the group supervision, as long as it's being conducted in the same week, you can break up your group hours.
Okay. Did everybody get that? All right. Another question here. Any other questions here? Okay, we have another question. What is the process for applying for BBS registration or ASW registration prior to graduation? Is there an additional step required before or after doing so to verify academic standing or graduation?
So once you graduate, what we're waiting for is your official sealed transcript with a conferral date. Once you have that, that's when you mail in the entire application packet. That's you would print out the application packet, and like I mentioned before, there's a checklist, and you just go down the checklist, all the items that I had mentioned that need to be included. But the key item is your official transcript with the conferral date. That's pretty much the last item that the individual is going to receive before sending in their application packet.
So there's nothing that they need to do prior to graduation?
No,
There's nothing they can do, really.
there's nothing else.
Yeah.
Any other questions? We have one in the back.
If you have been convicted of a crime and it's been expunged, my question is, will we have to report it? And yeah.
Did you hear that question?
No, can you repeat that, please?
Can you repeat it loud?
So if you're convicted of a crime and that crime has been expunged out of your record, will you have to report it?
Yes, you still need to. They're on our LCSW application as well as the ASW application. There are a couple conviction questions. Even if it's been expunged, you still need to check yes to the conviction question. And it tells you in there what you have to provide, which are the court documents as well as a written statement, explanation statement from you.
Okay, another question in the back.
Just for clarification, I know the packet requires the fingerprints. Would you recommend us doing that like closer to graduation date, or because I know it says 2 months or 60 days before sending in our application?
I mean, 60 days is what we
Yeah.
What are the
fingerprint.
Oh.
Okay, so fingerprints, for fingerprints, it's 60 days from the date that, basically, from the date that I am going to be processing your paperwork. And if I happen to be working, let's say, a month behind, you don't want to get your fingerprints done too early. So I would get them done right before you're sending in your application packet. That way you have your total 60 days.
transcripts, fingerprints. Question up front.
Can you also clarify what additional things are required to renew our ASW registration? I heard the fee, and I heard within that year to take the California Law and Ethics exam. Is there anything else that we need to do to every year renew our registration?
No, that's it. And just a kind of another clarification on that, and I think it was mentioned before, is after the registrations are renewable up to 5 years. After that 5th year, you'll have to actually apply for a subsequent registration number if you still need one. And that application process is it's pretty much almost like a renewal. And not that there's not much more information you have to give. But on that subsequent registration number, now the law is that by that time, to get a subsequent registration number, you have had to have passed the law and ethics exam, or else you will not be able to get the subsequent registration number. So.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? I think we're actually good on questions. This presentation will be recorded. We'll send it out in a couple of weeks. Let's give a round of applause to our presenters. Well, thank you, Darlene, Trish, Deborah, Christina. Thank you all so much for joining us again. This is a great privilege for us to be able to have the actual Board of Behavioral Science, personnel here. The people that will actually be evaluating your applications. What a privilege. So thank you all. And we don't take that lightly, so we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. We love to do this, and hopefully the information was very useful for you, and we can continue kind of collaborating on these, because this is the best way, I think, it can be a very daunting process, and but we're here to help, and we want to be able to give you the best information possible and try to work through this. So maybe we can do this again sometime soon.
Not too soon.
Of course. Well, we wanted to thank our IT team here as well, and the IT team over there in Sacramento, because this couldn't happen without all the coordination here, and our team and Grace upstairs as well. So thank you all. Thank you all for coming. A couple of quick things. Wanted to remind you to check your emails, but we do have on April 6th, Wednesday, we do have our Welcome to the Profession event, where we have alumni that will be greeting and welcoming second-year students into the profession. So look for your email for details on that. There are a couple of career fairs, one in San Diego at the Academic Center on April 6th, and then we have the Los Angeles Social Career Fair on April 8th in Carson. And then finally, we have an employer panel in Orange County, where we will have the Orange County Social Services and Healthcare Agencies and the Long Beach Child Guidance Center as well on April 14th. So be on the lookout for that. This concludes our presentation. Thank you very much, and we'll see you at the next event.